this started. So that's going to go. And this is always my favorite time. I always, and I know Rachel and Julia, you probably heard me say this too, but I always feel like when I start the webinar, it's like flinging the doors open at the store and watching people like coming
Absolutely.
in.
And then they say, "Hi, I'm here and from there," and I love that.
Oh, that's what I want to make sure that I've got the chat so that everybody can talk to each other if they would like. Oh yeah, there we go. So everybody can chat.
And I always love seeing that.
And put it and ask questions, guys, because I might not remember all the questions that you want to ask.
We want questions. You can put those into the Q&A. I'll go through all that stuff, but it is really fun to I don't know if everybody knows, but Warwick, we do our in-person events after the store's closed. So we close the store, set up, because we don't really have an event space. So we set it up. So that's what I mean. It's like we literally fling the doors open. Sometimes we have lines of people waiting outside. So, everybody's coming in.
Oh, this is so fantastic.
I'm seeing Debbie, who I know sent me a message on Facebook saying she was coming. This is great. Oh, Susan.
Yay. And I love that we have someone from London at a decent time. Maggie Brooks and Julie and I did one in the winter, and we didn't plan it well because it was 1 a.m. for Maggie.
It was 1 a.m. for her. I felt so bad because I didn't even occur to me.
I wasn't thinking. She was such a good sport, and she was so alive for 1 o'clock. It was great.
I think another Canadian. Yeah, I think you just go on sheer adrenaline for those like very late nights. I've done a few that started at midnight. That's about as late as I can go, and I don't think they make a huge amount of sense after that. I'm very confident in what I'm saying, but what I say doesn't make any sense at all.
After that is just.
I'm a night owl, but that's even pushing it.
That's pushing it.
It should be like on. All right, so everybody's coming in. I'm going to start this up because I think we want to get to the good conversation here. So, I think everybody that's probably here has been here before with us, either at a Julia event or an event with Rachel. I'm so happy to put both of you together this time.
I know, this is exciting.
Yeah, so it's super fun. But for those of you that might be new to joining us here on Warwick's Facebook, Warwick's Zoom. I don't remember, where am I? Who am I? For those of you who don't know, Warwick's is located in San Diego, California. Julia, you're joining us from
London.
And Rachel,
so
you're
joining the other Warwick.
The other Warwick.
Yes.
And Rachel, you're joining us from
Toronto. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got lots of good comments coming in the chat already. For those of you, so what I'm going to do in the chat is I'm going to put a link to Julia's book that you can order that from. If you are joining us from out of the United States, so unfortunately we can't ship it out of the US, but visit your local bookstore wherever you are and buy Julia's book. We do have something a little special though for Julia's book, is we have some signed book plates. So that is something that we're excited about to be able to share with you. So if you do, and there's a limited quantity, so if you do order from us on that, just make sure that you put that you would like a signed book plate on your order with that. Let's see. So I'll put that in the comment section. If you scroll over your screen, I know all of you used to Zoom and everything, but if not, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom. I'll come in. Rachel and Julia are going to talk for about 30-ish minutes, and then I'll come back in with the questions. So don't be shy. We like questions. So we've got a great morning ahead of you. So let me introduce. Like I said, you all probably know both of these ladies very well, but I have to do my due diligence and do my intro. So Julia Kelly is the international best-selling author of historical novels about the extraordinary stories of the past, including The Last Dance of the Debutante, The Last English Girl, and The Light Over London. Her books have been translated into 14 languages. In addition to writing, she's been an Emmy-nominated producer, journalist, marketing professional, and for one summer, a tea waitress. She's called Los Angeles, Iowa, and New York City home before settling, as she said, in London. And she's here today to talk about her new title, A Traitor in Whitehall. Who's got a cover? Who's got it? You got it? Yay, there it is.
I was prepared this time.
Love it. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I've got that somewhere.
Yes.
And joining her is our wonderful Rachel McMillan, who's moving, and it's Thanksgiving in Canada. It's like, oh, so many things going on today. Rachel is the author of The London Restoration, The Mozart Code, Mozart Code, the Herringford and Watts Mysteries, the Van Buren and DeLuca Mysteries, and the 3/4 Time series of contemporary Viennese romances. She is also the author of, I love this, Dream, Plan, Go, a travel guide to inspire independent adventure. Ladies, have a great conversation. See you in about a half hour.
Thanks so much, Julie. Hi, Julia. You have perfect hair. You always do.
We'll see how long it lasts through this.
This is awesome. I love that you've branched out into mystery. I love reading mystery. It's one of my favorite genres to read. And I especially love historical mystery because I find that it opens doors for people to learn a lot about things they wouldn't usually know about within the context of a really awesome formula and genre that people really enjoy. And first off, before we start, say in the comments if you agree with me, this needs to be a BBC miniseries like 17 seconds ago. Like,
I would love that.
Endeavor has ended with my husband, Sean Evans. Like, just move him over to this. Okay, so yeah, mystery is a bit of a genre hop for you. What attracts you to the genre? I can't help but be put in mind of the Maggie Hope series by my friend Susan Elia McNeil, which is fantastic. It has a very similar cadence. And your mysteries are also set in the war rooms. How did this shift come about? Not that you've shifted completely, because you've still got other straight historicals happening right now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. And secondly, if I sound a bit stuffed up, it's because I had my release day and then immediately caught a cold. So I'm on the mend.
I always get a cold after release.
Right.
Oh
yeah, so very annoying, but we're on the right side of feeling better. So in terms of, kind of shifting genres, let's say, from historical fiction, I'm still very much writing historical fiction, and in fact I have a book that's on my desk to edit as we speak, but I've been a lifelong mystery reader. I absolutely love it. My mother is a great reader of mysteries, so is my father. I grew up with the PBS mystery theme song, going in the back of my head on Thursday nights when I was a kid. So I've always had this draw towards it, and blending mystery with the historical side has always had a lot of appeal to me as well, because I think, in several of my historical fiction books, there's a twist or an element or something that the characters are searching for. It's not a full mystery, but something that kind of is mystery sympathetic, let's just say. And in this case, it's getting to really indulge that whole, desire to go ahead and explore mystery and solve a puzzle and present an amateur sleuth with a murder. So that's what I did with this. I had the idea for wanting to set a book in the Cabinet War Rooms, the Churchill War Rooms, while I was visiting the museum with a friend who'd never been before. And I was walking through with her, having gone. And she's very studiously, reading all of the exhibition plaques. And she's an academic, so she's very focused on all of this. And I'm looking around and thinking, gosh, this would be a good place to set a murder.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought, that's a very strange first reaction, but a very writerly first reaction to a place. And so it just spiraled out from there. I started thinking about, who would have been the person in the war rooms who would have been solving this mystery. And one of the places that we looked at that day was the typing pool, where women would go through. And of course, there was no Xeroxing or anything like that in those days. And duplicating anything required a stencil and was a very time-intensive process. So the typing pool was this vital part of the war rooms, and they had access to a huge amount of information and interacted with a huge number of people. And I thought, who better than a typist to potentially explore what might have happened behind a mystery and try to catch a killer. And that's how we ended up with Evelyn Redfern.
I love her, and I basically love all of this stuff. I love writing Bletchley Park, which is featured in a few of my novels. I love the war of nerds, as I call it, because we have in this situation a war that's separated from the front lines. And World War II fiction is very prominent right now, but you and Susan Elia McNeil, and I think of Ashley Weaver, who's doing the Electra McDonald series, where she's a lockpick, brilliant. They take us into a war that's still being fought, but within cloistered quarters. And I think it's wonderful that you had this almost Agatha Christie-esque there's only so many people who could have committed this, and you've painted yourself a bit of a perimeter. And
Yes.
it's a real reflection. One of my favorite, you're a Masterpiece Mystery fan. I'm a huge, anyone who's been on a Zoom with me knows I'm a huge foiled war fan. Because
Yes.
that's where I learned so much about the war, not from the big battles, but from the everyday. And I thought that you painted that so well, what it was like to be behind the lines. And this is not new to you in terms of your wide range of books that extol some of the lesser known tenets of history. I mean, we've got the gardens, we've got orphans, we've got
Yes.
debutante balls. Where did you, like, what speaks to you when you're obviously a murder in the cabinet rooms, but what are some of the hallmarks that you look for when you're deciding to paint a story world?
Well, there are a few kind of strong themes that I think run through my work, or I'd like to think run through my work. One is that I am always interested in women's lives and women's friendships. And so that's a really strong element through a lot of the things that I've written. I also am really interested in women who are sort of operating on the fringes of society, or fringes of what's acceptable. When I was an undergraduate, when I had grand dreams of becoming an academic, and I thought I was going to get my PhD in history and everything before I took a left turn into journalism, I was really, really interested in women who were doing things that were different from what society would have expected of them. People who became governesses and doctors, and, you know, some of them trailblazers in some respects, like women who were doctors in Victorian Britain, but some who were just trying to survive. And I think one of the fascinating things about World War II is that you have this opening up of possibility for what women could be doing and what women were expected to do in society. So, you know, conscription comes in at some point. This book is written before that, but there was a really strong sense of, you know, women showing up and doing their part as part of the war effort. Some out of necessity, some out of a sense of duty, some out of a sense of adventure and fun. You definitely see that within some of the diaries that you can read of women who were, you know, they just saw this as an opportunity to, you know, get out from what might have been expected of them by their families, because they could put on a uniform or they could go and do something that they never would have had the opportunity to do before. So I think that's always something that I'm interested in, and especially with a character like Evelyn. You know, I wanted her to not just have her whole identity wrapped up in her job, so being a typist, but for her to have a rich backstory as well. And her backstory is that she is a notorious, or she was a notorious child, sort of between about the ages of 8 and 11. Her parents, her father is a book writing adventurer, sort of explorer, one of these men who becomes famous for his tales of daring do. And her mother is a French society, basically socialite. And they have a very acrimonious divorce that results in a very public custody battle. And the newspapers get hold of this and they dub her the Parisian orphan, even though she's not an orphan, she has parents. But they kind of, they decide that this is a really good catchy title, and she becomes this notorious figure. And so when we jump forward in the book, when the book starts, Evelyn has lived a lot of life already, but a lot of it is due to her parents or due to circumstances that she's gone through. She's sort of figuring out who she is at the start of this book, and her job in the war rooms kicks off this whole new area of her life that she never would have expected, which is that she becomes an amateur sleuth. You know, she's read mystery novels her whole life. She absolutely adores them. And now she's getting to use some of those skills and actually apply some of the things she's read to an actual real life murder for her.
And I love that about her. First off, I kind of want a prequel of Evelyn's parents because they totally fascinate me.
I would
They're
love
such
to write a prequel.
interesting characters. I mean, the romantic in me would need them to come together again in the end. But I really loved that because she has kind of the blueprint for how her life might have gone. But she's able to carve an identity in a world where it doesn't matter where she came from. And I think that the war was in many ways a great equalizer. Especially in World War I, we see, you know, the whole Downton Abbey thing, this class structure. It doesn't matter when you're all together. And to a lesser extent in World War II, especially when women were able to carve out new roles for themselves and fill in because men were just not around. I mean, I feel you almost already answered this, but do you feel you were already prepared for this new genre given the tools you took from the very deep toolkit you have from writing complex historical fiction?
Well, the arrogance of being an author is that you often think, yeah, I got this. And then you start actually writing the book and you realize that you're not on quite as solid ground as you thought. And that can be the case in terms of research or structure. In this case, the big thing for me was this is a big shift. You know, mystery is a genre in and of itself, and it has a different kind of contract with the reader. So, you know, you need to, by the end of a mystery novel, feel that there is a satisfactory answer to the puzzle at the center of the book. So it was a real shift from the sort of more the books that I've written in the past where the emotional journey of the character is much more that focus. In this case, the unlocking of the puzzle was much more the focus. So I think that was a big learning curve. On a fun side, I thought I was on really solid ground with my love of Agatha Christie and Golden Age mysteries. The problem is that I've read so much Agatha Christie, but I read it when I was very young. I was sort of 11, 12, all the way up until basically I was 18 years old. I read so many of them. I have forgotten so much of what I've read, I realized. So as I started to try to mention books and name check books within writing this, because I drop a lot of titles, not just Christie, but, you know, Dorothy Sayers and Allingham and a whole bunch of different authors. I realized that I needed to do some remedial reading in order to catch up. And not only did I need to do that, I was limited by what would have been published by that point in 1940.
She was so prolific.
So prolific. And so many of these authors wrote and wrote and wrote between, you know, the
like,
short stories. It's incredible. And so I ended up going back to basics. And with the help of my mother, a great mystery reader, was able to identify some authors who I should basically start over again in terms of reading the series. So I did that with Niall Marsh, and I did that with Dorothy L. Sayers, and I did that with Christie. And so I am still, because this is the start of a series, very happily, I am still doing that remedial reading as we speak and trying to catch up with what would have been potentially on Evelyn's shelf, you know, as she was going through and solving these mysteries.
I love that. And I'm a huge Dorothy Sayers fan, especially the Harriet like Harriet and Peter are just like my favorite things. And one of the things I mean, I started in historical mystery and happily got away from it because I don't feel it's my, I actually found it very challenging. But one of the things I loved about it was the fact that you could establish a set of characters who, you know, you could repeat over and over again, and you get to know them so well and they start speaking for themselves. But one of the difficult things is that for people tuning in, authors never know how many books they're going to get ultimately in a historical mystery series. So usually you're contracted 2 or 3 at a time. So you need to leave enough doors open that the readers want to go back and read more about these characters and their lives and their loves. But you also have to keep wrapping up the individual mysteries. So all of this to say, in the middle of this conversation, never wait until the entire series is published in order to support or ask from your library or get the book, because your purchase of the book with a happy book plate from Warwick's
exactly
vote that you want more Evelyn Redfern. Obviously, I hope that Evelyn David go on forever and ever and we see more of all these lovely characters. But the realities of publishing are we don't always know how many stories we're going to get. Was that a difficulty in how much information you decided to feed into Traitor in Whitehall?
It was, and I think it's something that, I'll be honest, I'm editing the second book in the series right now, so that it's contracted for 3 to start out with. Hopefully there will be many, many more, but it is really tricky because I have an idea of where I want the series to go, but I feel like I have this really big series arc in my head that if I get books and books and books, I can do, but I kind of need to create this mini trilogy arc in order to make sure, and I know you've done this before, where you've had characters who pop up in each other's books, and you know, you have to thread those things through, and it's a challenge because part of my instinct is to sit there and be like, I'll tell everybody everything because I have the idea right now. But you do need to spread it out, and you do need to kind of give a sense that the breadcrumbs you're leaving feel like they're building towards something, but they're not building towards something too quickly or too slowly. And it's the thing with a will they won't romance, which, you know, Evelyn maybe doesn't think that she's going to end up with David. Moira definitely thinks she does, or that she will. Moira is her best friend. And so there's the push and pull of, do you have a character and her sidekick have a romantic relationship? Do you keep them apart? What do you do with that? And so I think I have some big decisions.
That dynamic is fun though. You have time to figure that out, just like we have time to see more about this. And I think that it's really wonderful, again, that you have an idea, because you've written so many standalones, that we want to create worlds that people can pick up the second or third book and not only understand it, but really want to go back to the beginning. And I think that, Evelyn and David, I really do want to talk about London, because London's one of my muse cities. I try to get there 2 times a year. I was just there in July. It's very rich for me as a setting and a character in my books. And clearly it is something that you love so much that you moved there and have a new life there, but also that you write so wonderfully well as a canvas for all of your lovely characters. So can you talk a bit about, I mean, what ignites the London spark? Is there a neighborhood you haven't written about yet? Is there a favorite neighborhood you have to explore?
Well, you know, the wonderful thing about London is it's so big. You know, I'm from Los Angeles originally, and if you talk to people from LA, and you're not from LA, it can be difficult to comprehend that there's downtown LA, which is probably what people would think of, sort of, but then there's greater LA, and then there's LA County, and it's like a Russian doll. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
London is so massive for people who don't, you have no idea how big that place is if you haven't been. Like, you could walk forever.
It's huge.
Yeah,
you absolutely can. And a lot of people only ever see the center of London when they come in and visit. You know, I don't live in central London. I live out in the west of London, and we're connected through a train line and all of that, but it's still very much within the M25, which is the ring road that goes around it. So, you know, it has that London feel to it. But so absolutely, there are neighborhoods I would love to write about, and I'm sure at some point I would want to explore more and more. I think one of the big things for me is it can kind of be explained in how I first started to write historical fiction. So I was writing romance before, and I moved over from New York. I moved to London, and I was walking around as I was getting used to the city, because, you know, when you move anywhere, even if it's, you know, between cities, but certainly if you move countries, it's the sort of shock of everything all at once, right? You're seeing everything new, and everything is kind of curious. And so I was walking around and kind of absorbing all of the stuff around London, and a lot of it is memorials, history that you're literally walking by every day. And I started to look into what it was that I was seeing, and I started to learn more and more about World War II, the Blitz, how it carved up and shaped London, what happened after London, you know, after the Blitz, and the housing crisis and the building boom and all of those things. And I think that as an author, a lot of times we're sort of taking in information without realizing what it necessarily is going to do in a book, or whether we'll even use it in the future. But for me, this was definitely an instance where I just sort of fell in love with the story of London in the 20th century, and how I could see the impact of that in my life in the 21st century. So it really, it's a beautiful city to write about. It's so interesting. It's so layered. And that's before even getting into some of the social stuff and class and all sorts of things. As you said, during the war, there was a lot of change, a lot of equalizing, but then things, of course, that also weren't so rosy. There's some wonderful books written about all the bad things that people did to each other in London during the Blitz.
All the looting, right? All the looting and
the crime, the black market. Absolutely. So it's just such a rich subject, and a fascinating one.
Yeah, I really love it. I love that with London, because it's such a bombed city. When I write London during the war, I have to cross-reference to Blitz bombed maps to see, did that street exist as of this time? And it can be very complicated because it really shaped, it's so fascinating. I mean, Madeline Martin talks about how, the last bookshop in London, all around St. Paul's and all around Fleet Street, all those beautiful bookshops are no longer there. So it seems to be, it's also a city that a lot of us have an insatiable curiosity towards. And I'm just seeing, I had so many questions here, but you are so astute and wonderful that you're just answering them all for me. Did you find that your outline and plotting changed for this in a way? Yeah, was it different in terms of like pacing than your other books? Because as you said, there's a complexity to your work that always leaves us, especially the Lost, please let me say this title correct, The Lost English Girl, which I really liked.
I made the mistake of having a last, and a lost all in a row. So The Last Garden in England, The Last Dance of the Debutante, and The Lost English Girl. And it confuses everybody, including myself.
I really liked that one. But you also have to remember, guys, that sometimes there's so many books with similar titles that we read that come across our desk for endorsement. And I'm like, which one are we on? But yes, that book actually seemed like such a really good prelude into this type of story for you, because there were gaps and the pacing was wonderful. So yeah, talk a little bit about outlining this new one for you.
Well, I knew it was going to be a challenge when I sat down to write my first synopsis, because typically what I'll do is I'll write a synopsis, I'll send it to my agent, we'll pass it back and forth a few times, we'll try to make sure that the pitch is really right, and then we'll go to my editor. I know I don't need to tell you that because this is something you're very familiar with.
And then the synopsis always changes, and my editor's like,
always changes.
We already have the back cover copy. I'm like, that's not really what happens anymore.
Yeah, the back cover copy always ends up being dramatically edited because usually I've changed people. And anyway, so typically I start out with this synopsis, and for me, it's usually about 7 to 10 pages long, as I'm just trying to get my thoughts out onto the page. So I wrote the whole thing. I did it in one big flush, and I was so happy. And then I looked at it and I realized there were 4 characters, and it was very easy to figure out who the murderer was, because process of elimination, it wasn't going to be the detective. So, and it wasn't going to be the victim. So I kind of had to pull back and be like, all right, you need to build a world, and part of that world needs to have a list of suspects. And so I decided I was going to close and lock down the war rooms, which I think is accurate. It was a place that was highly protected, very, very secretive. So not that many people would have had access to it. And so that meant that my list of suspects could be much smaller than the entirety of London. And so I went through and I started to figure out, who are these people? What would their do they have a big secret? What would their motivation have been if they were to have killed this person? What are the red herrings? And I have a cork board that I pull out sometimes. And I was just starting to date my now fiance when I was doing this. So it's incredible he didn't run screaming from the room when he saw it. But I put everybody's name, I put their alibis, and I started to put, the victim in the center and all the threads off of it with literal red string. It looked like something out of a TV murder show.
Like the only murders in the building when they go in. Yes.
Exactly. It looked completely crazy, but it helped me understand how everything needed to be interconnected, but the interconnected parts didn't necessarily need to actually take us into the murder. It needed to take us somewhere interesting within the relationships of these people. So that really helped. And I was able to sort of rewrite and get going with actually writing the book. And then when I turned it into my editor, she said, I really like this, but I think your pacing is a little bit off. And we picked up, and without spoiling anything, we picked up and moved a significant scene that unlocks some knowledge for Evelyn. we picked up and moved that to basically break up the interrogations and the sitting down and saying, okay, where were you? What time were you? How did you know this person? What was your relationship like? And tried to give that a little bit more oomph to it. So whether it was moving people out of a literal interrogation room and having them have conversations in other places, you know, the canteen, you know, out and about in the world. There's one person gets spoken to on a park bench after an air raid. So that really helped with the pacing and helped kind of freshen the world up, because the one difficult thing about having a closed room in a very secretive place in wartime Britain is there aren't that many people getting in and there aren't that many people getting out. So we needed excuses to get Evelyn and David out of the war rooms and have them get a breath of fresh air, have the reader get a breath of fresh air.
I've so had those editorial notes before, like, Rachel, do we really need to be here again? Can you not fix somewhere else? Because sometimes you're just looking for somewhere to have a brilliant conversation. And
absolutely.
What I love about Evelyn, which is going to be difficult for you as a writer, is when you're writing a mystery series or you're writing someone with a whiff of espionage, which we have here with David, you're writing someone who is maybe not for you, but for me, I'm writing people who are far smarter than I am. And they have to be convincingly smarter than I am. I mean, I think you're brilliant, but smarter in a logistical way. And one of the things I loved about the pairing of Evelyn and David, and I cannot wait to see more of them, so send me books right away, is that she is, as we've talked about, very much a woman in a man's world, which is, you know, that outlier sort of thing. And I find that David counterbalances that so well. I just, guys, don't we love them? No, this is such a, and I'm cognizant of the time because there are questions here and I want Julie to be able to get to them so I don't ramble forever at you. But I do find this such a natural progression for you. And I also have a major cover love. This is
thank you. I do love the cover. Well, you know, it's funny. This actually speaks a little bit to the Evelyn question herself. This cover is very, very close to what we originally went out with. The only thing that's different is my agent said, you know, is there a way that we could get a sense of voice and a sense that of the fact that Evelyn is a bit snappy and witty and all of those things. So there's a little flower there, which you can also see on the spine here. And then we get her lipstick also. And I think that really kind of helped tie in and bring everything to life. And the reason I say that is, you know, this is the first time I've written a first person point of view book. Evelyn has a very, very strong voice. She came straight onto the page that way. It was almost like a runaway train. She sort of had her own ideas and her own voice and her own experiences. And I think that was very, very, very clear from the very beginning was, you know, this was a woman who is intelligent and is going to use her intelligence and is also smart enough to know when she's being underestimated and how she can use that to her advantage. And I think that with that, it's really fun for me to see the end product of that. It is not fun for me day to day to sit down and be like, now I have to be sparkling, brilliant, and witty on the page.
Those line edits that are like, you could be more clever here.
Right.
Very clever today. But I think
that's literally amazing. Well, thank you. That's literally what I'm doing right now with revising this second book's draft. As I'm doing developmental edits, I'm trying to put Evelyn's sparkle back in because I think one of the notes I got back from my editor was, you know, she's a little flat. Maybe we can bring her up a little bit more. And I say we as in the royal we. I can bring her up a little bit more because ultimately it's my responsibility. And the reason that that's so important is because I know that the first draft is for getting everything out there and trying to get the puzzle to all hang together. And then I love going through and doing the edits that, you know, just inject life into these characters and detail and all that historical atmosphere that people who read historical fiction absolutely love. You know, you want to know about, you know, the type of lipstick or the way that something sounded or whatever that would be, what movie somebody would have been going to see, what book they would have been reading. And so adding all of that is a real joy, but it is when you're an author and you set yourself up the challenge of writing a character who is supposed to be intelligent and witty and kind of always one step ahead of other people in the room, you also have to do that yourself. And sometimes it takes a couple of drafts to get there.
And I think it really speaks a lot that you are such a character-driven writer, and that's actually my favorite type of mystery. I know that there are people who really want to read the mystery for the intricate clues. I actually read the mysteries because of the human introspection and development in interaction in mysteries, and I find that you find that balance so well, especially painting Evelyn's world. So I'm going to end with the question that I always ask people, because I'm a voracious reader and I know you are too. Is there anything you're reading and loving right now, or a favorite book or two that you can recommend to us?
Yes. So I have my phone because I'm reading far too many things right now. Breaking with my usual habit of trying to read one thing at a time because I'm reading research books at the moment too. I am in the middle of Pachenko at the moment, which everybody who has read,
I've heard that's amazing.
Everybody who's read it has told me they absolutely loved it. So that's by Min Jin Lee. And I also have been telling people about, I'm pulling up my Goodreads challenge right now, In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. It's had this huge splash over here because it won the Waterstones debut fiction prize, which is a brand new prize that replaced the Costa Award, I believe. It's a book about two young men who know each other in public school. So public school here, private school in the US where I'm from. And they go ahead and volunteer in World War I. So they're officers in the war. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's wonderfully written. And I think it's one of those books that feels very confident and very mature for a debut author. So I'm really excited to see what she comes up with next. It's absolutely wonderful. So if you like historical fiction, highly recommend that book as well.
And I would like to encourage everybody, if you look at Canadian bestseller lists in my country, and you look at London and UK and Ireland bestseller lists, you are going to see a lot of historical fiction. And if you're a historical fiction writer, there's probably going to be stuff that you may not have had on your radar before. Yes. I sometimes think it's so easy to pay attention to USA Today and New York Times, and that's wonderful. But I encourage everybody to look outside of the American offerings. I mean, I'm an agent in my day job. All of my clients basically are American. So I know that that's a huge publishing world. And Julie and I both work with American publishers. So I'm not disparaging it. I'm just saying you can often find really awesome historical fiction, like the one we're doing in a few weeks.
With
oh my gosh,
Marissa
Gluttonous,
yes,
which is French Revolution. That's astounding, and it might not have been on my radar otherwise. Debbie, I think the title and author was In Memoriam by Alice Wynne, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Rachel, before we get to the questions though, you threw the one out to Julia about what she's excited about reading. Do you have anything off the top of your head?
Give me recommendations so I can read even more books.
Well, what did I just wait? I'm gonna have to do what you done. Learn how to speak, Rachel.
I'm gonna give you mine. It's called North Woods.
Oh yes,
Daniel Mason. It's a story it's a 400-year history of this house in New England. I believe it's New England. And you wouldn't believe that a story about a house could be that compelling, but it's so unique and there's nature, right? It's beautiful. So Daniel Mason, North Woods. If you're looking for something. Okay, did you find one?
I want to shout out to Sisters of Fortune, which is coming out next winter by Annalee Huber, who actually is doing the swap of what you've done. And she's gone from writing 2 concurrent historical mystery series, Lady Darby, and then her post-war, almost 1920 set Verity Kent series, and she's written something called Sisters of Fortune, and it is set aboard the Titanic, and it's 2 Canadian sisters, and I actually got to read it early as kind of a sensitivity reader to see if the Canadian sensibility was there. I also really am telling everybody, and I'm a bit of a broken record at this point, but if you have any interest at all in anything publishing, you have to read Yellowface. That's kind of
really interesting.
That is a book I gave to everybody over the summer. because it is absolutely acerbic and it reflects so much of our world. And actually, sometimes I cannot even believe HarperCollins published it because it's such a scathing satire.
It is.
But she is awesome because she wrote Babel. She wrote the fantasy.
Oh yeah,
and she is an incredible writer. And why am I blanking on her name?
R.F. Kuang.
Yeah.
RF, yeah.
And then
my local bookstore has still has the sticker up as you walk in. It's just the sticker of the Yellowface title page. So I feel like it watches me every time I walk by.
Love that. And it's a stunning cover. And then I did the one I'm reading right now is the new, oh guys, forgive me. I've just moved and I'm catching up on everything. But it's the new Janie Chang and Kate Quinn book that
right. And I can't think of the title. That's not out yet, is it?
No, it's out in February.
Yeah.
Okay.
I cannot believe. Please forgive my.
Well, we'll look for that one. We'll do a pre-order on that one.
And get me to interview them because that's a fun one.
I know
loved
that will
it.
Definitely be a fun one.
Please, everybody, forgive my brain today. It's something I've said. The Phoenix Crown. That's it.
That's right.
Pre-order that.
The Phoenix something.
Yeah. So San Francisco, there's some opera, and Kate has a history in opera. She doesn't usually get to explore in her fiction. She's an opera singer. She trained at Boston University. So it's really fun to see that. And Janie Chang, of course, is a great Canadian writer. So I always love to see my country people represented.
Yes. So we will definitely be pitching to try to get that for a virtual event. No question, Rachel. And you're on slate for that one. So so I think most of you all answered most of the questions that were coming in about process and about the historical versus the mystery and the whole bit. But Julia, so you're on track for 3 books for this.
Yes.
Are you going to write these 3 and then maybe go back to historical fiction, or what are you thinking?
Well, so the schedule is a little it's a little different than what I initially planned because I am taking a year between books on the historical fiction side. But the idea is to have a mystery and to have a historical fiction on opposite ends of the calendar, and get to do these 2 different things. And I think for me as an author, that's really wonderful because they're different kind of parts of my brain that are working, different muscles writing wise. I love writing historical fiction. It can be very emotionally tiring because it's big emotions and lots of things and lots of stuff happening. And then with the mystery, I love writing it. It's a big puzzle that's very intellectual in that regard. But then that's tiring as well in its own way. So getting to kind of go back and forth between the 2 and explore different things, I think is going to be really good for me. That's felt like the right mix so far. So I love both and I don't want to stop doing.
But does that mean 2 books a year?
Well, some years I think it is. Yeah. So this is a 2-book year. So
that's a lot. That's a crazy lot. And so, Rachel, I think you answered this question earlier without even maybe thinking that you did, because somebody asked early on if you were going to be writing any more of the Van Buren and DeLuca?
Van Buren and DeLuca. Okay, so I always had, it was contracted for 2, and I always had an idea for a 3rd, but publishing, it didn't take off the way they wanted it to. And so I had to pivot. And luckily I was able to pivot into writing London Restoration, Mozart Code, my upcoming Operation Scarlet, 3 more untitled books in the future that are keeping me going in historical fiction. And so I really would love to, at some point, even if I do it on my own, indie publish that 3rd DeLuca, because I always imagined the 3 of them, but hopefully readers, hopefully they felt satisfied enough. But I should say, if you've read that series, it's an offshoot because he's the son of my lady detective and my muckraking reporter in the Harringford and Watt series, which is all 6 of them are on deep discount, an ebook right now. So if you've ever wanted to read more Edwardian mysteries set in my beloved Toronto, my publisher let me know there's a big sale. So if you've read Van Buren and DeLuca, you can go back, but I hope to at least do it on my own someday.
Yeah, I know you said it earlier, and to your point, it's like, and I think that people, everybody's got to buy the book, check out the book, something, because that's the next, that is publishing looks at. I can't tell you how many authors I've seen over the years that have had these huge advances, huge things happen. It's just great. But then it doesn't earn out. And then you never see anything because not enough people bought that. So if you like something by an author, buy it for your friend, give it as a holiday, bring it to your holiday party when you have that perfect gift. Northwood's author is Daniel Mason. He wrote a book called Winter Soldier, was his first book. So
on the sort of big advances and then things going away, I got some really good advice from an author, from Julia London once, and she told me,
I love her.
She's wonderful. She's so generous and so lovely. And she told me, what you want in your career is a slow, steady career.
Yep.
You want to be able to keep writing books and to put books out there, and they're going to be ups and there are going to be downs. But, ultimately you're building a readership and you're going forward and you're building this slow and steady career. And I've always really, really liked that as a bit of advice, because you can't control any of this. And I hope readers understand, when authors say, could you please review? Could you please buy the book? Could you please tell your friends? Could you please tell your book club? It's because we don't have we send these things out into the world and then we're sort of like, I hope people like it. And,
I hope we can do as much as we can from our corner.
There's it is absolutely zero control. I mean, it is beyond your control. What's that famous saying from Dangerous Liaisons? It's beyond my control.
It's beyond my control.
And honestly, as an agent, I can tell you, there have been times where I've told an author, let's ask for a lower advance and sell through, because the career is so much, the trajectory of a career.
And that, I think, gets lost,
because
you're on the front end, we're on the back end, Rachel. And it's that sometimes gets, because everybody thinks, oh, just go, but it's like, that could be dangerous.
Yeah. But the thing ultimately is that, people who take time out of their day to join events like this and to support authors, it's so appreciated. It's just wonderful. And so, yes, you have three very appreciative people.
And
so you really do.
Libraries are great. I mean, obviously we're with a bookstore right now, and bookstores are great. Support bookstores, but
anywhere you can.
Libraries, anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Julia, you have tons of comments in here. Everybody loves, such great love for both of you, Rachel too. In the comment section, it's so much fun because, Rachel, what I'm noticing is the trend here is that everybody loves the variety of books that you and the variety that you bring everybody. So that seems to be the theme of the love that's being shared.
You
go where the contracts are, guys.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is a little bit like just being, you're a freelancer in a way. You go where there's work. So
and you go where the zeitgeist of the industry is. And
the beautiful thing, the beautiful thing is when the where the work goes is also where you creatively want to go as well. And then there's this happy medium that everybody gets to. So
Julia, do you have like a list of ideas, or do you have a list somewhere, or do they just kind of come to you?
I have so many ideas. So I have a list. I use a program called Notion from sort of back in my old day job days. I love nothing more than a project management software. So yes, I have a list in Notion of just tons of ideas. Some are literally a couple of words and I have no idea what they mean, because I probably woke up one day and, had a dream and jotted something down and it doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Some are a little bit more fully fleshed out. Some are, articles and things like that. And so it's when you get to, for me, there's sort of lots and lots of ideas. And then there's getting to the point where the ideas actually come together into something. There's a big difference between I want to write a book about X and I want to write a book about X, and here are the characters, and here's where it's going to go, and this is what I think ultimately the story is going to be. And so I'm sort of always reading and wandering around and listening to podcasts and listening to interviews and just trying to get a sense of what's interesting to me, because it's surprising what bubbles up sometimes, years and years prior to actually sitting down and writing the book. Maybe the key presents itself. And actually, ironically, again, I can't say anything without spoiling things, but one of the keys in A Traitor in Whitehall, one of the elements is absolutely in fact, the key element that unlocks the whole mystery for them is something that I had encountered years ago, kind of mashed with something else, to create this clue basically that solves everything. So yeah, it's fun to have those moments of inspiration pop up.
And Rachel, you kind of teased a little bit. Your next book coming out is it's going to be so fun. What is the title again?
Operation Scarlet comes out in May, and it's my retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel story in Nazi-occupied Paris and Rouen. And then I'm just finishing up Liberty Scarf, which is another one with my Castle Keepers co-authors, Janelle Sazelsky and Amy Runyon. And I think that's coming out next fall, and it's a Liberty of London scarf and 3 different women in World War I and how they're all brought together in love and friendship by this one scarf. And it's really cool. So
can't wait to have the 3 of you back.
That one is, it's been fun for me to do World War I to get back to that. And then I've got a few more World War II ones on contract. And I can't say a lot, but I can tell you that they'll take me back to London on page and then to Vienna. And then of course I wrote a book called The London Restoration, and it caught the eye of a nonfiction editor in the UK. And so I'm now writing a biography of Sir Christopher Wren, the architect. So when I was in London last, it was for the Wren 300 exhibits. They're all over. So if you get to London this year, go check out all the Christopher Wren stuff, because I'm a nerd and I love the churches.
I think everyone around here, I think, that's kind of what brings us all together.
Fine.
And I do have Debbie, thank you so much for coming and appreciating that we put these virtual events on. I adore doing them. I love bringing Julia you in from London and Rachel you in from Canada. I just think this is still so fun, and we will continue to do these. And Julia, with the next book, we hope to see you here again.
Yes, it should be another mystery coming up here.
I'm a big fan.
Untitled at the moment.
Untitled.
I am totally crushing on David, and I love when I crush on guys in book series. So thank you very much for that.
Very welcome. Well, more from him soon, hopefully.
Rachel, thank you for a great interview as always. Julia, best of luck with the book. Thank you everybody for joining in with us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.